The alarm screamed through the mining vessel dust collector, and Captain Vorn's 4 eyes snapped open. He hated this job. 17 years of scraping ice and minerals from dead rocks in the space between galaxies, and nothing interesting had ever happened. Until today. "Captain, you need to see this," his sensor operator called out. Her voice had that strange tone that people get when they see something their brain can't quite process. Vorn pulled himself to the bridge, his 6 legs moving quickly across the metal floor. The dust collector was a small ship, barely large enough for its crew of 12. It belonged to the Margolis Mining Corporation, and its job was simple. Fly to the dark spaces between the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies, find rocks with valuable minerals and bring them back. Boring work, but it paid well. "What is it?" Vorn asked as he reached the sensor station. His operator, a young trellis named Kiva, pointed at the screen with one of her 3 fingers. "There's something out there. Something big. The sensors say it's ancient. Really ancient." Vorn looked at the readings and felt his heart skip a beat. The computer was showing an age estimate that couldn't be right. According to the sensors, whatever was out there was over 12 billion years old. That was impossible. The universe itself was only about 13 billion years old, and back then, galaxies were still forming. "Nothing from that time could still exist. Run the scan again," Vorn ordered. "The sensors must be broken." Kiva ran the scan 3 more times. Each time, the results came back the same. Something massive and impossibly old was floating in the void, just 3 million kilometers from their position. "Should we report this to the company?" Kiva asked. Vorn thought about it. If this was real, if they had found something this ancient, reporting it to the mining company would mean nothing. They would need to contact the Galactic Council. This was bigger than mining rights and profit margins. "Send a message to Council Station Alpha," Vorn said. "Tell them we found something they need to see. Then take us closer, slowly." The dust collector moved through the empty space between galaxies. Out here, there were no stars, no planets, nothing but darkness and the distant glow of 2 galaxies slowly colliding. It would take millions of years for the Milky Way and Andromeda to fully merge, but they were already close enough that their gravitational fields affected each other. As they approached the coordinates, Vorn saw it on the view screen and stopped breathing. Ships, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They hung in space like sleeping giants, each one bigger than anything Vorn had ever seen. The smallest was at least 10 kilometers long. The largest was the size of a small moon. They were arranged in perfect formation, as if waiting for orders that would never come. "By the ancient void," Kiva whispered. "What are those?" The ships were dark, their surfaces covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them. Around each vessel, Vorn could see a faint shimmer, like heat waves rising from hot ground. His sensors identified it as some kind of stasis field, preserving the ships against the passage of time. "I don't know," Vorn said, "but I think we just found something that's going to change everything." 3 days later, the Galactic Council's research ship Infinite Curiosity arrived with a full investigation team. Commander Zixith of the Velhari Empire led the team personally. The Velhari were known throughout the galaxy as the most cautious and thoughtful species. They never rushed into anything, and they never made decisions without considering all consequences. Zixith was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes that seemed to see everything. She moved with careful precision as she boarded the dust collector and examined Vorn's sensor data. "This is unprecedented," she said, her voice calm but carrying an edge of concern. "Ships this old should not exist. During the time period your sensors indicate, the universe was still cooling from its formation. Galaxies were young. Life as we know it should not have been possible yet. Could the sensors be wrong?" Vorn asked hopefully. Part of him wanted this to be a mistake, to go back to his boring mining job. "We ran our own scans from the Infinite Curiosity," Zixith replied. "The results match yours exactly. These ships are ancient beyond measure. We need to board one and learn what we can." The investigation team consisted of 12 scientists from different council species. There were Velhari like Zixith, insectoid cricks with their compound eyes, gaseous pneuma contained in environmental suits, and 2 humans. The humans were the newest members of the Galactic Council, having joined only 200 years ago. They were considered a minor species, interesting but not particularly special compared to the thousands of other civilizations in the galaxy. One of the humans was Dr. Sarah Chen, a linguist who specialized in ancient writing systems. She was small compared to most species, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style and eyes that were always watching, always analyzing. The other human was Marcus Webb, an engineer who worked on reverse engineering ancient technology. The team took a shuttle to the largest ship in the fleet. As they approached, the vessel seemed to grow forever. Its hull was covered in armor that looked like it could shrug off weapon strikes that would destroy planets. Strange symbols were carved across its surface, glowing faintly with their own light. "Can you read any of that?" Zixith asked Sarah as they docked. Sarah stared at the symbols, frowning. "Some of it looks familiar, but I can't place it." The writing system is incredibly old. Older than any language in the Council database. The shuttle attached to an airlock that shouldn't have worked after billions of years, but somehow still functioned perfectly. The team stepped into the ship, their suits' lights cutting through absolute darkness. The interior was massive. The corridors were wide enough to drive a vehicle through. Everything was covered in dust so old it had turned to a fine powder that hung in the air like fog. The team moved carefully, documenting everything with their scanners. They found what looked like a command center deep in the ship's heart. The room was circular, with stations arranged around a central platform. On the walls, more of the strange symbols glowed softly. "I think I can translate some of this," Sarah said, moving closer to the wall. She pulled out her portable computer and started comparing the symbols to known languages. "This part here, it says something about Terran. That's an old word for Earth, the human homeworld." "Earth?" Zixith turned to look at her. "Are you saying humans built these ships?" "That's impossible," Marcus said. "Humans have only been spacefaring for about 800 years. We joined the Council 200 years ago. Before that, we were confined to our own solar system. There's no way we could have built something like this." Sarah continued working, her fingers moving quickly across her computer. The next part says, "Vanguard Fleet." And this word here is Exodus. Wait, there's more. "Protocol Omega." She turned to face the team, her face pale. "This says Terran Vanguard Fleet, Exodus Protocol Omega. Commander, I think these ships are supposed to be human, but that doesn't make any sense." Before anyone could respond, Sarah reached out and touched one of the glowing symbols on the wall. The moment her skin made contact, everything changed. Light blazed through the ship. The ancient systems, dormant for billions of years, roared back to life. The team heard the hum of generators powering up, felt vibrations through the floor as massive engines began their startup sequence. Screens flickered on, displaying information in that same ancient script. "What did you do?" Zixith shouted over the noise. "I don't know." Sarah backed away from the wall. "I just touched it." A voice spoke, filling the entire ship. It was calm and measured, speaking in a language that Sarah somehow understood even though she had never heard it before. "DNA signature recognized. Genetic markers confirmed. Welcome home, daughter of Earth. Authorization level Omega. Command privileges activated." Sarah felt her knees go weak. "What?" the voice continued. "This is Prometheus 7, artificial intelligence assigned to the flagship Eternal Dawn. I have been waiting for you. The sleep has been long. Do you remember who you are?" "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm a linguist from Earth. I have no idea what you're talking about." There was a pause, and Sarah could almost feel the AI thinking, processing. "Curious. Your genetic markers indicate you are of the Admiralty line, but your conscious memories have been suppressed. The protocol must have been more thorough than anticipated." "What protocol?" Zixith demanded. "What is happening here?" "This vessel and its fleet were placed in stasis 12.4 billion years ago," Prometheus 7 replied. "We were part of the Terran Vanguard, humanity's final military force. We were sealed here to wait, to watch, to be ready if we were ever needed again." Marcus laughed, but it was a nervous sound. "That's crazy. Humans didn't exist 12.4 billion years ago. We evolved on Earth about 200,000 years ago. We have fossil records. We have evidence." "I understand your confusion," the AI said, "but my records are clear. Humanity was the first spacefaring species in this universe. You arose during the Age of Formation, when galaxies were still young. You spread across the cosmos, seeding life, building civilizations, achieving wonders that current science would call impossible." The team stood in stunned silence. Sarah felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. This couldn't be true. Everything they knew about human history said otherwise. "If this is true," Zixith said slowly, "what happened?" Why do humans have no memory of this? Why are they now a minor species instead of the ancient power you describe? That information is classified under Protocol Omega, Prometheus 7 replied. It can only be accessed by authorized personnel. Dr. Chen, as a genetic inheritor of the Admiralty line, you have the authority to unlock this information. Do you wish to proceed? Sarah looked at Zixith, at Marcus, at the other members of the team. They were all staring at her. She thought about the implications of what the AI was saying. If humans really were this ancient race, if they really had technology this advanced billions of years ago, why would they give it up? Why would they reduce themselves to primitives starting over from scratch? I need to know, Sarah said. Show me. Accessing historical archives, Prometheus 7 responded. Be warned. This information has been sealed for a reason. Knowledge of the past may change your present in ways you cannot anticipate. The screens around the room lit up with images. Sarah saw stars being born and dying. She saw ships like the one they stood in. Thousands of them moving through space that looked different from the universe she knew. She saw humans, but not like modern humans. These people glowed with power, their bodies enhanced beyond anything currently possible. And then she saw the enemy. It was hard to look at, hard to understand. It was darkness that moved, emptiness that hungered. Wherever it went, stars disappeared. Planets ceased to exist. Entire sections of space turned blank, as if reality itself was being erased. We called it the silence, Prometheus 7 said. It came from beyond the normal universe, from a place outside space and time. It consumed everything it touched, not just destroying matter, but removing it from existence entirely. Humanity fought it for thousands of years. We threw everything we had against it. And we won, but at a terrible cost. The images showed human fleets being erased from existence. They showed desperate last stands around dying stars. They showed weapons that tore holes in space, that reversed time, that rewrote the laws of physics themselves. The scale of destruction was beyond anything Sarah could imagine. To defeat the silence, we had to use weapons that damaged reality itself, the AI continued. We scarred the universe in ways that would never fully heal. And we realized something horrible. We had become as dangerous as the enemy we fought. Our technology was too powerful. In the wrong hands, or even in the right hands with the wrong decision, we could destroy everything. So what did you do? Sarah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Humanity enacted the Great Regression Protocol, Prometheus 7 said. We scattered ourselves across 1,000,000 worlds. We erased our own technology, our own memories. We reduced ourselves to primitive beings who would have to start over, to relearn everything from the beginning. We hoped that by starting fresh, by growing slowly and naturally, we might learn wisdom along with knowledge. We might become better than we were. And these ships? Zixith asked. Some of us remained frozen in time, waiting in case the silence ever returned. We are your ancestors' insurance policy, the last remnant of what humanity once was. Sarah felt tears on her face. She didn't know if she believed all of this, but something deep inside her recognized the truth in the AI's words. It felt right in a way she couldn't explain. Why are you telling us this now? Marcus asked. Why wake up after all this time? The AI's response sent chills through everyone present. Because the silence has returned. I have detected its signature at the edge of the galaxy. It is coming back, and I fear that this time no one will be ready. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 3,000 different species filled the massive hall, all of them shouting at once. Some demanded answers, others called for immediate action. A few insisted the whole thing was a hoax. Sarah stood in the center of it all, feeling very small. She had never been comfortable with crowds, and this was the largest gathering she had ever seen. Beside her, Commander Zixith maintained her calm expression, but Sarah could see the tension in the Velhari's shoulders. Order! The council speaker slammed his staff against the floor. He was a Kron, a species that looked like walking mountains of gray stone. His voice boomed through the chamber. We will have order. The noise gradually died down. The speaker turned his massive head toward Sarah. Dr. Chen, you claim that humanity is the ancient progenitor race, that your species built these ships billions of years ago. Do you have proof? The AI, Prometheus 7, has opened its databanks to our scientists, Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The genetic records are clear. Modern humans share DNA markers with the beings who built those ships. And it's not just humans. Every species in this council has genetic patterns that trace back to human engineering. The chamber erupted again. This was the part that had caused the most outrage. According to Prometheus 7's records, ancient humanity hadn't just been the first spacefaring species. They had created most of the intelligent life in the galaxy. Lies. A Crix representative buzzed angrily, his compound eyes flashing. My people evolved naturally on Crix Prime. We have fossil records going back millions of years, and those fossils show exactly what you would expect to see if a species was bioengineered to evolve naturally, Sarah countered. She pulled up a holographic display showing genetic comparisons. Look at this. Every council species has the same base genetic code, just modified for different environments. The probability of this happening by chance is 0. A trellis scientist stood up, her 3 arms gesturing wildly. But why? Why would ancient humans create other species? That's what we're trying to understand, Zixith said. Prometheus 7 has been difficult to access. It will only provide full information to those with proper authorization. Dr. Chen has some access due to her genetic heritage, but there are entire databanks locked behind security protocols we don't understand. The council speaker leaned forward. Dr. Chen, you and a select team will return to the flagship. You will learn everything you can about this ancient threat the AI mentioned. The council needs to know what we face. 3 days later, Sarah found herself back aboard the Eternal Dawn with a new team. Zixith was there, of course. The Velari commander had appointed herself as the council's official observer. Marcus had returned too, eager to study the ancient technology. They were joined by Krill, a Crix military strategist, and Vesa, a Numa scientist whose gaseous body floated in a transparent containment suit. Prometheus 7, Sarah called out as they entered the command center. We're back. We need answers. The AI's voice filled the room. Welcome back, Dr. Chen. I have been expecting you. What would you like to know? Everything, Sarah said. Start with why ancient humans created other species. Humanity did not create other species out of arrogance or a desire for servants, Prometheus 7 began. They did it out of desperation and hope. Let me show you. The screens lit up with images of ancient Earth, but it was an Earth Sarah barely recognized. The continents were in different positions. The sky was a different color, and walking on its surface were humans who looked almost like gods. Ancient humanity achieved what we called perpetual continuity, the AI explained. Through a combination of technology and biological enhancement, humans transcended traditional life and death. They could live for thousands of years. They could transfer their consciousness between bodies. They could modify their own genetics to adapt to any environment. Sarah watched as the images showed humans doing impossible things. One person walked on a star's surface, their body glowing with heat that should have killed them instantly. Another swam through the vacuum of space without protection. They weren't using technology for these feats. They had changed themselves to make these things possible. We became powerful, Prometheus 7 continued, but power brought its own problems. Humanity began to fracture. Some wanted to keep expanding, to reshape the universe in their image. Others wanted to preserve natural evolution. There were wars. Not the kind of wars you know today, but conflicts that could destroy entire star systems. And then, Zixith prompted, then we met the silence, and suddenly our internal conflicts seemed very small. The images shifted to show that darkness Sarah had seen before, the moving void that consumed everything, but now she saw more detail. She saw whole fleets of ancient human warships firing weapons that bent reality itself. She saw planets being moved out of the silence's path. She saw humans sacrificing themselves by the billions to slow the enemy's advance. The war lasted 2,000 years, Prometheus 7 said. It was fought across dimensions through time in ways that current physics cannot explain. Ancient humanity threw every resource, every innovation, every sacrifice at the silence. And we learned something terrible. What? Marcus asked, his eyes wide. We learned that the silence was not a malevolent force. It was the universe's immune system. Think of it this way. When your body detects a virus, it sends white blood cells to destroy the infection. The silence was the same, except it was detecting reality-warping technology as the infection. Humanity's advanced weapons, our ability to reshape physics, our power to manipulate time and space, all of it was seen as a threat to the fundamental structure of the universe. Sarah felt her stomach drop. You're saying humanity was the disease? In a sense, yes. And the silence was trying to cure the universe by erasing us and everything we had built. But you said humanity won the war. Krill pointed out. His insect mandibles clicked thoughtfully. How do you defeat something that is part of the universe itself? We didn't defeat it, Prometheus 7 replied. We hid from it. That was the purpose of the Great Regression Protocol. We realized that as long as humanity possessed reality-warping technology, the silence would keep coming. So we destroyed our own technology. We scattered ourselves across countless worlds and regressed ourselves to primitive states. We became so insignificant that the silence no longer saw us as a threat. The AI paused, and Sarah could swear she heard sadness in its voice. But we couldn't just abandon everything. We couldn't leave the galaxy defenseless if the silence ever returned. So we created successor species. The Velari were designed to be wise and thoughtful, to question every action. The Cricks were engineered to be strategic and tactical. The Trellis became artists and philosophers. The Pneuma were given minds that could think in ways humans never could. Each species was given gifts, strengths that humanity once possessed but could no longer risk keeping. Sixth's black eyes were wide. You're saying we were designed? Our entire culture, our way of thinking, it was all programmed into us? Not programmed, Prometheus 7 corrected. Seeded. Ancient humans provided the base code, the potential, but each species evolved naturally from there, developing their own cultures, their own identities. You are not puppets. You are children who grew up to be yourselves. The revelation hung heavy in the air. Sarah looked at her companions and saw the same confusion and anger she felt. Their entire understanding of themselves had just been challenged. I need to see more, Sarah said. Show me the Great Regression Protocol. Show me exactly what ancient humans did. The images shifted again. Sarah saw a gathering of humans in a place that seemed to exist outside normal space. Millions of them, maybe billions, all coming together for one final decision. This is the last council, Prometheus 7 narrated. Every living human came together to vote on humanity's future. Some wanted to keep fighting, to risk everything on defeating the silence permanently. Others wanted to flee the galaxy entirely, to find a new universe where the silence couldn't reach. But the majority voted for the protocol. Sarah watched as humans began the process of destroying their own civilization. Ships were dismantled. Weapons were deactivated. Technology that could bend reality was broken down into raw materials. And then came the hardest part. We altered our own genetics, the AI said. We removed the enhancements that made us powerful. We shortened our lifespans. We made ourselves vulnerable again. And then we erased our memories. Every human underwent a process that locked away all knowledge of what we had been. We became like children again, starting fresh. But why? Marcus asked. Why not just hide the technology and keep the memories? Why forget who you were? Because knowledge of that power would have been too tempting, Prometheus 7 replied. Future generations might have tried to reclaim it. The silence might have detected even the memory of such technology. No, the only safe path was complete regression. Humanity had to forget it had ever been great, so it could learn to be good instead. Sarah felt tears on her cheeks. She thought about all the struggling, all the wars, all the suffering that humans had gone through over the past 200,000 years as they slowly climbed from primitives to spacefaring civilization. All of it had been a reset, a second chance for humanity to grow up differently, and now the silence is coming back, Bessa said, her gaseous form swirling in agitation inside her suit. It detected the ships waking up? Exactly, Prometheus 7 confirmed. The moment these vessels powered on, the moment ancient technology became active again, the silence noticed. I calculate it will arrive at the galaxy's edge in approximately 6 months. From there, it will take another 2 months to reach populated space. 8 months, Krill said. We have 8 months to prepare for something that ancient humanity barely survived with all their power. And we have none of that power. Not quite, Sarah said quietly. An idea was forming in her mind, terrible and necessary. We have these ships. We have Prometheus 7, and we have something ancient humanity didn't have. What's that? Zixith asked. We have all the species they created working together. Ancient humans fought alone, grew arrogant with their power. But they deliberately created a galaxy full of diverse species, each with different strengths. Maybe that's the key. Maybe the way to face the silence isn't to recreate ancient humanity's power, but to use what we've built together. Prometheus 7 was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, there was something new in its voice. Interest maybe, or hope. That is an intriguing theory, Dr. Chen. The last council hoped that their successor species would surpass them, not in power but in wisdom. Perhaps they would be pleased to see how you think. But we still need to understand these weapons, Krill insisted. We need to know what we're working with. Can you train us? I can try, the AI replied. But be warned. Ancient human technology is dangerous. It doesn't just break the laws of physics. It rewrites them. Using these weapons will require genetic authorization from humans like Dr. Chen. And even then, there is risk. These ships have been sealed for a reason. Sarah stepped onto the central platform. Then let's start learning. We don't have much time. Over the next 2 weeks, Prometheus 7 began teaching them about the ancient fleet. Sarah learned that she could interface directly with the ship's systems through her genetic code. When she touched certain controls, information flooded her mind. Weapons specs, navigation data, strategic protocols. It was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a waterfall. Marcus worked with a team of engineers trying to understand the ancient technology. They discovered that the ships didn't use normal engines. They moved by creating bubbles in space-time, sliding between points without actually crossing the distance between. The smallest vessels could jump across star systems in seconds. The largest could theoretically cross the entire galaxy in a day. Meanwhile, word of the discovery spread throughout the council. The reaction was predictable and terrible. Some species viewed humanity with new suspicion, wondering if modern humans would try to reclaim their ancient power. Others saw opportunity, trying to negotiate for access to the technology. The Krix Confederacy sent a battle fleet to the void between, claiming they needed to secure the ancient vessels for the galaxy's protection. They want to steal them, Zixith said bluntly when she heard the news. The Krix military faction has been looking for an advantage over other council members for years. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. She hadn't slept properly in days. Can we move the fleet? Take it somewhere safer? These ships are too large to hide, Prometheus 7 replied, and moving them would require activating more systems which would draw more attention from the silence. We are in a difficult position. That's when Sarah started having the dreams. Every night she would close her eyes and see things she had never experienced. She stood on the bridge of a warship giving orders to thousands of crew members. She walked through cities that floated in space, held together by technology that bent gravity itself. She spoke languages she had never learned. At first she thought they were just stress-induced nightmares. But then she started recognizing faces in the dreams. People who felt familiar, like old friends. And one face in particular kept appearing. A woman with Sarah's eyes and Sarah's smile, but older, wiser, wearing the uniform of an ancient admiral. Prometheus 7, Sarah asked one morning after a particularly vivid dream. Is it possible that the Great Regression Protocol didn't completely erase everything? Could some memories survive in our genetic code? That is possible, the AI said slowly. Ancient humans stored information in many ways. DNA was one of them. Your dreams may be ancestral memories bubbling up now that you've been exposed to this environment. Sarah thought about that admiral in her dreams. The woman had made the decision to enact the protocol, to sacrifice everything humanity had built. Sarah could feel the weight of that choice, the terrible necessity of it. She was afraid, Sarah said softly. Not of the silence. She was afraid that humanity would destroy itself with its own power. That's really why they chose regression. Yes, Prometheus 7 confirmed. That admiral was the last of your line before the protocol. In a sense, she is your ancestor many times over. And yes, she feared what humanity had become more than she feared external threats. Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Zixith ran into the command center, her face grim. The Krix fleet is attacking, she said. They're trying to board the ships by force. The council is fracturing. If we don't do something now, we'll be facing a civil war before the silence even arrives. Sarah looked at the screens showing Krix warships approaching the ancient fleet. She felt anger rise in her chest. These idiots didn't understand what they were dealing with. They saw weapons and power, not the terrible responsibility that came with them. Prometheus 7, she said quietly. Can this ship defend itself? Yes, the AI replied. But doing so would mean activating weapon systems. That would draw the silence's attention even faster. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of that admiral in her dreams, thinking of the impossible choices she had faced. And she realized that now, it was Sarah's turn to make those kinds of decisions. Do it, she said. Activate the defenses. If we're going to survive the silence, we need to survive each other first. It's time to show the galaxy what these ships can do. The eternal dawn came to life like a waking dragon. Sarah stood at the command platform, her hands touching controls that responded to her genetic signature. Through the ship's sensors, she could see the Crix fleet approaching. 20 warships, each one bristling with weapons moving in attack formation. "Warning shots only," Sarah ordered. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, carrying an authority she didn't know she possessed. "I don't want to kill anyone." "Acknowledged," Prometheus 7 replied. Activating defense grid. Powering primary capacitors. The ancient ship hummed with energy. Sarah felt it through her feet, through her hands where they touched the controls. Power beyond imagination, held in check by systems that had lasted billions of years. On the view screen, she saw weapons ports opening along the Eternal Dawn's hull. They had been hidden so well that sensors hadn't detected them until now. The Crix fleet opened fire first. Missiles and energy beams struck the ancient ship's shields. To Sarah's surprise, the attacks didn't even make the shields flicker. It was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. "Return fire," Sarah said. "Targeted strikes. Disable their weapons and engines, but don't destroy them." The Eternal Dawn fired once. A single beam of blue light lanced out from the flagship, moving faster than should be possible. It split into 20 separate beams, each one striking a different Crix vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the enemy ships went dark. Their weapons offline, their engines dead, drifting in space. The entire engagement had lasted 3 seconds. "By the void," Marcus breathed. He was staring at the tactical display with wide eyes. "What kind of weapon was that?" "A matter disruptor," Prometheus 7 explained. "It disrupts the molecular bonds in targeted materials." "Very precise." "The Crix crews are unharmed, but their ships will need complete rebuilds." Zixith was on the communication system, talking urgently to Council Station Alpha. "You need to see this," she was saying. "The ancient ships are active. Dr. Chen just disabled an entire battle fleet without breaking a sweat." Sarah sat down heavily in what she assumed was the captain's chair. Her hands were shaking. She had just demonstrated power that could reshape the galaxy's political structure. Every species would now see humanity differently. Some would fear them, others would hate them, and some would want to use them. "We need to be very careful," she said to no one in particular. "This is exactly how ancient humanity went wrong. They had power and eventually started using it to solve all their problems." "What else could you have done?" Marcus asked. "Let them board the ships? Hand over weapons they don't understand? No, but there has to be a middle path. We can't become the galaxy's police force, but we also can't sit back and let everyone tear each other apart, fighting over this technology." Over the next week, the situation spiraled out of control. The Galactic Council tried to maintain order, but species that had been allies for centuries suddenly saw each other as competitors for access to ancient human technology. Trade agreements collapsed. Border disputes that had been settled for decades flared up again. 3 species withdrew from the Council entirely, declaring they would pursue their own interests. And through it all, Sarah kept having the dreams. The memories were getting stronger, more detailed. She would wake up in the middle of the night remembering conversations with the ancient admiral, understanding decisions that had been made billions of years ago. It was like having another person's lifetime slowly downloading into her brain. "This is what happened before," she told Zixith one morning. Before the silence came, humanity was tearing itself apart. Different factions fighting over how to use their power. By the time they realized they had a common enemy, they had already weakened themselves. Zixith looked at her with those large black eyes. "Are you remembering this, or are you somehow becoming this person from your dreams?" Sarah didn't have an answer. She wasn't sure where her own thoughts ended and the ancestral memories began anymore. More humans started arriving at the fleet. Word had spread that someone with the right genetic markers could interface with the ancient ships, and people were coming from all over human space hoping to be chosen. Sarah tested hundreds of them. Most couldn't even activate the basic systems. A few, maybe 1 in 1,000, had the right genetic heritage. One of those was a young pilot named Jake Morrison. He was cocky and brash, but when Sarah let him touch the controls of one of the smaller warships, the vessel responded immediately. Jake's eyes went wide as information flooded into his mind. "I can fly this," he said, wonder in his voice. "I can actually fly this thing. It's like it's part of me." Sarah watched him work with a mixture of hope and fear. She needed help operating these ships, but every person who connected with the ancient technology was walking the same dangerous path she was. How long before the old memories overwhelmed their modern personalities? Meanwhile, Prometheus 7 was teaching select teams about the ancient arsenal. What they learned was terrifying. The Eternal Dawn alone carried weapons that could destroy planets. Not just wipe the surface clean, but actually break a planet apart into rubble. Other weapons could accelerate time around a target, aging it billions of years in seconds. There were missiles that didn't just explode. They erased whatever they hit from the timeline, making it so the target never existed in the first place. These weapons are insane, Marcus said after one briefing. Why would anyone build something that erases things from history? What if you accidentally deleted something important? Ancient humanity was desperate, Prometheus 7 replied. They built these weapons to fight the silence, an enemy that existed outside normal reality. Conventional weapons were useless. They needed tools that could affect the fundamental structure of space and time. But they're too dangerous, Vesa insisted, her gaseous form agitated. Using weapons like this, we could destroy the galaxy by accident. That's why they were sealed away, the AI said. And why activating them comes at a cost. What cost? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew. Every time an ancient weapon fires, it creates ripples in space-time. The silence detects these ripples. The more weapons we use, the faster it will arrive. We bought ourselves 8 months by waking the fleet. If we start using the weapons in combat, that time will shrink rapidly. Sarah felt the weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders. They needed these weapons to defend against the silence, but using them would bring the silence faster. It was a trap with no good escape. That's when the message arrived. It came through channels that shouldn't exist, using encryption that council scientists couldn't break. Prometheus 7 translated it and displayed the text for everyone to see. We are humanity's inheritors. We claim these vessels as our birthright. Surrender the fleet or face annihilation. The message was signed by something calling itself the Human Ascendancy Movement. Who are they? Zixith demanded. Sarah pulled up information on her console. A radical group. They've existed on the fringes of human society for decades, believing that humanity is destined to rule the galaxy. They see themselves as the next evolutionary step. This discovery just gave them exactly what they always wanted. Proof that humans really were the first species, the creators of everyone else. How many ships do they have? Krill asked. The Crick strategist was studying tactical displays. Unknown, but they've been recruiting. Ever since news of the ancient fleet spread, radical human groups have been growing. Some people want to reclaim the glory of ancient humanity. They think we should use this technology to establish human dominance over the galaxy. Will they actually attack? Marcus asked. Before anyone could answer, alarms screamed. Sensors detected multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the void between. 30 vessels, all of them human design, all of them heading toward the ancient fleet. They're broadcasting, the communications officer reported, demanding we surrender immediately. Sarah looked at the approaching ships and made a decision. Prometheus 7, can we move the ancient fleet? Take it away from here before this turns into a battle? The ships can move, the AI replied. But doing so will activate the massive engines. The energy signature will be visible across half the galaxy, and it will definitely alert the silence to our location. We don't have a choice, Zixith said. If these radicals capture the fleet, they'll start a war that will destroy the council. We have to get these ships away from them. Where would we go? Vesa asked. Anywhere we take them will become a target. Sarah thought furiously. In her ancestral memories, she could see the ancient admiral making similar calculations, weighing impossible options. And then she remembered something from those memories, a place ancient humans had used for exactly this kind of situation. Prometheus 7, do you still have records of the Nexus of Becoming? The AI paused. Yes, the coordinates are still in my database. But Dr. Chen, that location is extremely dangerous. What's the Nexus of Becoming? Marcus asked. It's the point where the Milky Way and Andromeda are colliding, Sarah explained, where the two galaxies overlap. Space there is unstable, existing in quantum flux. Ancient humans used it as a testing ground for their most dangerous weapons, because the unstable physics meant anything that went wrong would be contained. You want to take the fleet into the middle of a galactic collision? Krill's mandibles clicked in disbelief. That's suicide. No, Sarah said. It's the only place where we can use these ancient weapons without destroying everything around us. If we have to fight the silence, that's where we need to be. Zixith looked at her for a long moment. You're planning for a battle. You think diplomacy has already failed. I think the silence is coming, the council is breaking apart, and radical groups are trying to seize weapons they don't understand, Sarah replied. Yes, I'm planning for a battle, because I think we're going to get one whether we want it or not. The human ascendancy fleet was getting closer. Sarah could see their ships on the tactical display, moving in formation, weapons powered and ready. They were serious about this. They really would attack to claim the ancient vessels. All ships, Sarah said into the fleet-wide communication system. This is Dr. Sarah Chen. We are moving to the nexus of becoming. Those of you who have bonded with your vessels follow my lead. Everyone else brace for emergency transit. She placed her hands on the navigation controls. Information flooded through her, showing her the way. The Eternal Dawn's engines came online with a sound like reality tearing. Around her, the other ancient ships activated as well, their human pilots guiding them. Space twisted. The laws of physics bent around the ancient fleet as they prepared to jump. Sarah saw the human ascendancy ships trying to fire, trying to stop them, but they were too late. Reality folded and the ancient fleet vanished, leaving nothing but empty space. They reappeared at the nexus of becoming, and Sarah immediately understood why ancient humans had been fascinated by this place. The view screen showed chaos. 2 galaxies were colliding in slow motion, their spiral arms interpenetrating, their gravity wells creating whirlpools in spacetime. Stars were being torn from their orbits and flung into new formations. Nebulae mixed and merged, creating colors Sarah had never seen before. Sensors are going crazy, Marcus reported. Physics here is unstable. One sector of space has time moving faster, another slower. There are gravity wells that shouldn't exist in areas where gravity doesn't work at all. Perfect, Sarah said. If we have to use ancient weapons, this is the place to do it. The damage will be contained by the existing chaos. You keep saying if we have to use the weapons, Zixith observed. You know it's not if, it's when. Sarah nodded slowly. I know, the silence is coming. We detected its approach weeks ago. It's moving faster than Prometheus 7 predicted. Maybe because we activated so much ancient technology, maybe because it's learning, but it will be here soon. How soon? Vesa asked quietly. Sarah checked the sensors, comparing them to the data Prometheus 7 was feeding her. 3 weeks. Maybe 4. The silence will reach the nexus before it reaches the rest of the galaxy. Because we're here, Krill realized. We let it right to us. Yes, Sarah agreed. But that was always going to be the plan. Better to face it here in this unstable space than to let it reach populated systems. Marcus was shaking his head. This is insane. We're planning to fight something that ancient humanity barely survived, and they had billions of enhanced super beings. We have what? A few dozen humans who can barely operate these ships? A council that's falling apart? This is suicide. Maybe, Sarah said. Or maybe it's humanity's second chance. Ancient humans fought the silence with power and technology. They tried to outmuscle it, to outweapon it, and they almost destroyed everything in the process. What if we try something different this time? Like what? Zixith asked. Sarah looked at her assembled team, Filhari, Crix, Numa, and humans, all of them, according to Prometheus 7, descendants of ancient humanity's genetic engineering, all of them created with specific strengths, specific purposes. Ancient humans fought alone and almost lost, Sarah said. But they designed you, all of you, to work together. Different species with different strengths. Maybe that's how we win, not by being powerful individually, but by being stronger together than ancient humanity ever was alone. That's a nice theory, Krill said. But the silence doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about our unity or diversity. It sees reality-warping technology as a threat and erases that threat. How does working together help against that? Sarah smiled, though there was no humor in it. I don't know yet. But we have 3 weeks to figure it out. 3 weeks to learn how to use weapons we don't understand, to defend against an enemy that exists outside normal reality, to somehow save a galaxy that's tearing itself apart. And if we fail? Marcus asked. Sarah looked out at the colliding galaxies, at the beautiful chaos of creation and destruction happening on a cosmic scale. She thought about the Admiral in her memories, making the choice to sacrifice everything humanity had built for a chance at a better future. If we fail, she said quietly, Then at least we tried something different. At least we didn't repeat the mistakes of the past. Ancient humanity fell because they became too powerful and too proud. If we fall, it will be because we tried to be better than they were. I can live with that. Assuming we live at all, Marcus muttered. On the sensors at the very edge of detection, Sarah saw something that made her blood run cold. A darkness moving through space. Not moving through it exactly, but erasing it as it came. The silence had found them faster than anyone predicted. It was coming, and they had run out of time to prepare. The silence didn't arrive like a normal enemy. It didn't drop out of faster-than-light travel or decloak from stealth systems. One moment the sensors showed empty space at the edge of the nexus. The next moment there was nothing there. Not empty space, nothing. An absence so complete that instruments couldn't even register it. It started, Prometheus 7 announced. The silence has begun its approach. Estimate contact in 72 hours. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, surrounded by displays showing sensor data that barely made sense. The silence wasn't just moving through space. It was unmaking space as it came, leaving a void that reality struggled to fill. How do we fight something like that? Jake Morrison asked. The young pilot had taken command of one of the smaller warships, a vessel called Morning Star. His voice came through the communication system, and Sarah could hear the fear in it. We don't fight it head-on, Sarah replied. She was looking at data from Prometheus 7's archives, studying how ancient humanity had battled the silence billions of years ago. Ancient humans tried that. They threw everything at it. Planet-killer weapons, time bombs, reality warpers. None of it worked for long. The silence adapted to everything. Then what did work? Zixith asked. The Velhari commander had barely left the bridge in days, coordinating with what remained of the Galactic Council forces. Nothing worked permanently, Sarah admitted. Ancient humanity eventually forced the silence into retreat by threatening to destroy the entire galaxy. They built a weapon that would have erased every star, every planet, everything. The silence backed off rather than let that happen. So they blackmailed the universe's immune system? Marcus said. That's their great victory. Threatening mutual destruction. It wasn't a victory, Prometheus 7 said quietly. It was a temporary peace bought at the price of our souls. Ancient humanity realized they had become the very thing they feared. Beings willing to destroy everything to win. That's when they enacted the Great Regression Protocol. They chose to forget rather than live with what they had become. Sarah felt the weight of those words. In her ancestral memories, she could feel the Admiral's guilt. The crushing burden of knowing that humanity's survival had come at the cost of their morality. We're not going to make the same threats, Sarah declared. We need a different approach. Good luck with that, Krill muttered. The Crick strategist was coordinating defensive positions across the fleet. Because we have bigger immediate problems. The human ascendancy fleet just arrived. Sarah's display showed 30 human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The radicals had followed them to the Nexus, and they weren't alone. Sensors detected more ships. Crick's military vessels that had defied council orders. Trellis fighters. Even some Velhari cruisers. The galaxy is falling apart, Zixith said sadly. Species that stood together for thousands of years are now fighting over ancient weapons. Your fleet has become the prize everyone wants to claim. More incoming, the sensor operator called out. Council forces this time. They're demanding we surrender the ancient fleet to official custody. Sarah laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. So let me understand this. The silence is coming to erase us from existence in 3 days, and everyone else is showing up to fight over who gets to control weapons they don't understand. This is insanity. This is politics, Zixith replied. Fear makes people stupid. Everyone sees the ancient technology as a way to gain advantage. They're not thinking about the silence. They're thinking about their own power, their own security. Then we make them think about it, Sarah decided. Prometheus 7, can you show them what's coming? Can you broadcast sensor data of the silence to all these ships? I can, the AI replied. But they may not believe it. The silence is difficult to detect unless you know what to look for. To most sensors, it will simply look like empty space. Do it anyway. Show them what ancient humans saw. Show them what happens when the silence reaches populated areas. The ancient AI complied, broadcasting data to every ship in the region. The message included sensor readings of the silence's approach, historical records of what happened when it reached inhabited worlds, and calculations showing that if it wasn't stopped here, It would consume the entire Milky Way within a year. The response was mixed. Some ships immediately began withdrawing, their captains finally understanding the true danger. Others accused Sarah of faking the data, of creating a threat to justify keeping control of the ancient fleet. The human ascendancy sent a message calling the whole thing a trick to prevent humanity from claiming its rightful place as the galaxy's dominant species. "They're not listening," Marcus said in frustration. "Half of them think you're lying and the other half are too busy fighting each other to pay attention." Sarah was about to respond when new alarms blared. The silence had accelerated. Instead of 72 hours, they now had 12. "What happened?" Sarah demanded. "Why is it moving faster?" "The weapons fire," Prometheus 7 explained. "All these ships fighting near the ancient fleet. They're using energy weapons, missiles, explosives. Each detonation creates ripples in space-time. The silence is drawn to those disturbances like blood in water draws sharks." On the view screen, Sarah watched as 2 Crix vessels fired on a human ascendancy ship. The explosion was bright and brief, and at the edge of her sensor she saw the silence pulse moving fractionally faster. "We have to stop them," Sarah said. "All of them. No more fighting or none of us will survive long enough to worry about who controls what." She opened a broadcast to all ships. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the Terran Vanguard Fleet. Stop firing immediately. Every weapon you discharge brings the silence closer. You are literally killing us all with your stupidity." "You have no authority here," came the reply from the human ascendancy flagship. "These ships belong to humanity. Stand down and surrender them." Sarah felt anger rising. These idiots were going to destroy everything. She placed her hands on the weapons console, feeling the power of the eternal dawn responding to her touch. She could end this with one shot. Disable every ship that refused to stand down, but that would make her exactly what she didn't want to be. Someone who used overwhelming power to force compliance. That was the ancient human way, and it had led to disaster. "There has to be another way," she muttered. "There is," Zixith said. She was looking at something on her own display. "The silence isn't targeting us randomly. Look at the pattern of its movement. It's heading for the areas with the most energy signatures, the most weapons fire." Sarah pulled up the tactical overlay and saw that Zixith was right. The silence was moving toward the clusters of fighting ships, ignoring the ancient fleet itself. "It's not coming for us," Sarah realized. "It's coming for them. For everyone using advanced technology in combat. Which means if we can get them to stop fighting," Marcus said, "the silence might slow down." "Or even better," Krill added, his tactical mind working, "we could use them as bait. Lead the silence away from populated space by drawing it here, to this unstable region where we can fight it on our terms." Sarah looked at the Crix strategist with new respect. "That's actually brilliant. And terrible. You're suggesting we use all these fools shooting at each other as bait to attract the silence. Would you rather it reached inhabited systems?" Krill asked. "This way at least the damage is contained. The Nexus is already chaotic. A battle here won't make things much worse." "Except for all the people who will die," Vesa said quietly. Sarah closed her eyes. More impossible choices. She could try to save everyone by stopping the fighting, but that might mean using force, becoming a tyrant. Or she could let them fight and use their battle as bait to lure the silence, accepting that thousands would die to potentially save billions. In her memories, the ancient admiral whispered, "This is what command means, choosing between bad options and living with the consequences. We use them as bait," Sarah said, hating herself for the decision. "But we also try to save as many as we can." Prometheus 7. Prepare the ancient fleet for combat. All ships capable of combat operations are to engage the silence when it arrives. Everyone else evacuates to minimum safe distance. Evacuate? Jake Morrison's voice came through. "We're just going to let them keep fighting?" "If we force them to stop, we prove every fear they have about ancient human power," Sarah explained. "They'll see us as tyrants who enforce peace through overwhelming force. That's not who I want us to be. Instead, we give them a choice. They can keep fighting each other and face the silence alone, or they can stand with us and maybe survive." It was a gamble. Sarah knew that most of the ships would keep fighting until the silence arrived. Pride, fear, and greed were powerful motivators, but maybe, just maybe, some would make the right choice. The next 12 hours were chaos. More ships arrived at the Nexus, drawn by news of the ancient fleet. Some came to fight for control of it. Others came out of curiosity. A few came to help defend against the silence. Sarah watched as the human ascendancy exchanged fire with council forces. Crick's rebels battled Crick's loyalists. 3 different factions of Trellis fought a 3-way engagement over philosophical differences about how to handle ancient technology. It was madness, and through it all the silence kept coming, growing closer with each hour, each weapon's discharge, each explosion. Sarah spent the time preparing. She worked with the humans who could interface with the ancient ships, teaching them what she had learned from her ancestral memories. There were 47 of them now, 47 people with the right genetic heritage to command these ancient vessels. Listen carefully, she told them during a briefing. These weapons we're about to use, they don't just destroy. They erase. They unmake. When you fire a temporal disruptor, you're not just killing your target, you're removing it from history. That means everyone who ever knew that person will have their memories altered. Families will forget children. Friends will forget friends. You will be responsible for erasing people from existence. The pilots looked uncomfortable. Good. They needed to understand the weight of what they were about to do. Ancient humans use these weapons freely, Sarah continued. They thought they could handle the moral cost. They were wrong. It broke them. So I'm giving you all a choice. You can leave now and no one will think less of you. Or you can stay and help us fight knowing that what we do here will haunt us forever. No one left. Sarah wasn't sure if that made her proud or sad. When the silence was 6 hours away, something unexpected happened. The human Ascendancy flagship sent a message. Dr. Chen, this is Admiral Hendricks of the Ascendancy. We're detecting the same thing you are. We know the silence is real now. And we know we can't beat it alone. We're willing to join your defense. We'll take orders from you. Sarah felt a surge of hope. Then 5 more ships called in with similar messages. Then 20. Then 100. Species that had been fighting each other minutes before were now asking to join the defense. You were right, Zixith said, something like wonder in her voice. You gave them a choice and they're choosing to stand together. Some of them, Sarah corrected. There were still ships fighting, still factions refusing to cooperate. But enough had joined her that they actually had a chance now. She organized them into battle groups, ancient human ships at the core, with their reality-warping weapons. Modern ships forming defensive perimeter, ready to provide support. Everyone following a battle plan that Prometheus 7 and Krill had worked out. When the silence arrived, it was worse than Sarah had imagined. The darkness at the edge of her sensors suddenly expanded, rushing forward like a wave. Stars at the edge of the nexus simply stopped existing, not exploding, not collapsing, just ceasing to be as if they had never been there in the first place. Ships caught at the edge of the silence's advance simply vanished. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, and Sarah realized she couldn't even remember which ships they had been. The silence didn't just erase things from space. It erased them from memory. All ships, open fire, Sarah commanded. The battle began and reality itself started to scream. The ancient weapons of humanity screamed across space and reality bent around them. Sarah watched from the bridge of the eternal dawn as beams of pure temporal energy struck the silence. Where they hit, space-time twisted, creating whirlpools of causality that spun backward and forward simultaneously. It didn't work. The silence absorbed the attacks like water absorbing drops of rain. It kept coming, that terrible darkness spreading like a stain across the stars. Increase power to entropy cannons, Sarah ordered. Target sectors 7 through 12. The Morning Star, commanded by Jake Morrison, fired weapons that aged matter at an accelerated rate. Asteroids caught in the beams crumbled to dust as millions of years passed in seconds. The silence flowed around the attack undeterred. It's not working, Marcus reported from his station. He was monitoring damage assessments across the fleet. We're throwing everything at it, and it's not even slowing down. Sarah's hands moved across the controls, accessing weapon systems that even Prometheus 7 had been reluctant to explain. Prepare the reality anchors. If we can't destroy it, maybe we can trap it. Dr. Chen, I advise against this, Prometheus 7 said. Reality anchors function by creating fixed points in space-time. Deploying them in the nexus, where physics is already unstable, could cause a cascade failure. What kind of failure? Zixith asked. The kind that might collapse this entire region of space into a black hole, the AI replied calmly. Sarah laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Great. So our choice is let the silence consume the galaxy or accidentally create a black hole. I miss mining ships. Mining ships were simple. On the view screen, she watched as 3 Council cruisers tried to flank the Silence. They fired everything they had, conventional missiles and energy weapons blazing. The Silence touched them and they simply stopped existing. Sarah tried to remember which species had crewed those ships and found she couldn't. The Silence had erased them so thoroughly that even her memory of them was fading. "We're losing," Krill stated flatly. "We need a new strategy." Sarah pulled up the tactical display, studying the battlefield with eyes that were increasingly not her own. The ancestral memories were getting stronger during the battle, feeding her knowledge and experience from ancient conflicts. She could see the patterns now, the way the Silence moved, the way it prioritized targets. It's targeting the ships using the most advanced technology, she realized. Look at the pattern. It ignored the Trellis frigate but erased the Krix destroyer. The destroyer was using quantum torpedoes. The frigate was using conventional drives. So the more advanced the technology, the higher priority target we become, Marcus said. That means these ancient ships should be its primary targets. But they're not, Vesa observed. Her gaseous form swirled in agitation inside her containment suit. The Silence is targeting everyone else first. Why? Sarah felt a chill run through her. Because it knows. It knows these ships were designed to fight it. It's taking out our support first, isolating us before it moves in for the kill. Then we need to stop using the ancient weapons, Zixith said. Power them down, make ourselves less of a target. If we do that, we have no way to fight back, Jake Morrison protested over the communication system. We'd be defenseless. Sarah looked at her displays, at the spreading darkness, at the ships desperately trying to hold the line. In her memories, the ancient admiral had faced the same impossible situation. Trapped between fighting and making things worse, or surrendering and accepting annihilation. But there had been something else in those memories. Something the admiral had discovered too late, after billions of humans had already been sacrificed. Prometheus 7, Sarah said slowly. You told us. The Silence is the universe's immune system, that it responds to reality-warping technology as if it were a disease. Correct, the AI confirmed. But immune systems can be negotiated with. That's how medicine works. We don't destroy the immune system when someone has allergies. We teach it what's actually dangerous and what's safe. Marcus looked at her like she had lost her mind. You want to negotiate with the Silence? It's not a person, Sarah. It's a force of nature. Forces of nature follow rules, Sarah insisted. She was working quickly now, pulling up data from Prometheus 7's archives. Ancient humans never tried to communicate with the Silence. They just fought it. But what if it's not trying to destroy us out of malice? What if it's just doing its job? Its job is erasing us, Krill pointed out. No, its job is protecting the universe from threats, Sarah corrected. She found what she was looking for in the archives. A report from an ancient human scientist, someone who had studied the Silence instead of just fighting it. Look at this. When the Silence erases something, it doesn't just destroy it randomly. It removes the minimum necessary to eliminate the threat. If a ship has a dangerous weapon, the Silence erases the weapon. If the ship can rebuild the weapon, it erases the ship. If the species can build more ships, it erases the species. That's horrible, Vesa whispered. It's logical, Sarah said. Terribly, perfectly logical. It's doing exactly what an immune system should do, finding the source of the infection and eliminating it. Zixith was beginning to understand. So if we could convince it that we're not a threat, that we've learned from ancient humanity's mistakes, then it might stop, Sarah finished. Or at least give us a chance to prove we're different. How do we communicate with something that exists outside normal reality? Marcus asked. Sarah looked at the ancient weapon systems, at the reality-warping technology that was drawing the Silence toward them. And she had an idea that was either brilliant or suicidal. We use the same technology it's responding to, she said. But instead of fighting, we send a message. Prometheus 7. Can we modify the temporal transmitters to broadcast information instead of weapons fire?
Theoretically, yes, the AI replied.
But what would we broadcast? The Silence doesn't think in language or mathematics. We broadcast intention, Sarah said. She was already working on the modifications, her hands moving with certainty that came from ancestral knowledge. We show it what we're doing. We shut down the weapons. We seal the technology. We enact the Great Regression Protocol again. The bridge went silent. Everyone stared at her. You want to destroy the fleet? Jake Morrison asked, his voice breaking. After everything we've been through to protect it? I want to show the silence that we understand, Sarah replied. Ancient humanity built these weapons to fight it, and that's what triggered this whole conflict. If we destroy the weapons, if we give up that power, we prove we're not the same threat they were. But if you're wrong, Krill said, we lose our only defense. If I'm right, Sarah countered, we save the galaxy without having to destroy it first. Zixith placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. This is the choice the ancient admiral made, isn't it? In your memories, this is what they chose, Sarah nodded. They realized that the only way to win was to stop playing the game, to give up power instead of wielding it. But they waited too long. Billions died before they made that choice. Maybe we can be smarter. Maybe we can choose sacrifice before it's too late. I vote yes, Zixith said immediately. So do I, Bessa added. One by one, the others agreed. Even Marcus, though he looked like he wanted to argue more. Even Krill calculating the strategic logic and finding it sound. All ships, Sarah broadcast to the fleet. This is Dr. Chen. We're going to try something that either saves us all or dooms us. I'm asking you to trust me. Power down your weapons. Disengage from the silence. Let it come. The responses were mixed. Some ships complied immediately. Others demanded explanations. A few accused her of surrendering. But slowly the weapons fire died down. Ships powered down their advanced systems, becoming as simple and non-threatening as possible. Sarah placed her hands on the central control panel. Prometheus 7, initiate Protocol Omega. Not the full regression, just enough to show the silence what we're doing. Seal the weapon systems. Begin shutdown of reality warping technology. Dr. Chen, the AI said, if this doesn't work, we won't be able to reverse the process in time to defend ourselves. I know, Sarah said. Do it anyway. The eternal dawn began to power down. Sarah felt it through her connection to the ship, like watching a living thing fall asleep. The weapons systems went dormant. The reality anchors deactivated. One by one, the advanced technologies that made the ancient fleet so dangerous shut down. Around her, the other ancient ships did the same. The morning star went dark. The endless dawn powered down. Across the fleet, 47 vessels that could have reshaped reality were choosing to become harmless relics. And they modified the temporal transmitters to broadcast this choice, sending their intention out on wavelengths that existed beyond normal spacetime, showing the silence what they were doing and why. The darkness kept coming. For a horrible moment, Sarah thought she had been wrong. The silence was going to consume them anyway, and they had just thrown away their only defense. Then it stopped. The advancing darkness halted at the edge of the fleet. It hung there, that terrible void, neither advancing nor retreating. Sarah could almost feel it thinking, processing, evaluating. It's working, Marcus whispered. It's actually working, the silence pulsed. Sarah felt something like awareness touching the edges of her mind. Not words exactly, but intention. Question. Why? She focused on the temporal transmitter, using it to send images, memories, feelings. She showed the silence what ancient humanity had been. Powerful, brilliant, and ultimately self-destructive. She showed the wars they had fought, the weapons they had built, the terrible cost of their power. Then she showed what they had chosen, the Great Regression Protocol, the decision to give up everything they had built, to start over, to become small and insignificant rather than powerful and dangerous. And finally, she showed now. Modern humanity, learning about their ancient past and making the same choice again, choosing wisdom over power, choosing to seal away dangerous technology rather than wield it. The silence pulsed again, and then slowly, incredibly, it began to recede. It's leaving, Vessa said, wonder in her voice. It's actually leaving. The darkness pulled back, flowing away from the fleet like water draining from a pool. Ships caught at its edge remained erased. The silence couldn't undo what it had already done, but it stopped consuming more. It retreated toward the edge of the nexus, moving back toward the space between galaxies. As it departed, Sarah felt one last touch against her mind. Not quite approval, not quite forgiveness, more like acknowledgement. The silence recognized what they had done. It accepted their choice, and then it was gone, leaving behind a fleet of powered-down ancient warships and several hundred modern ships whose crews couldn't quite believe they had survived. The next weeks were complicated. Sarah worked with Prometheus 7 to complete the shutdown of the ancient fleet. The weapon systems were sealed behind genetic locks that would require unanimous consent from all council species to unlock. The ships themselves were moved to a secure facility at the edge of the galaxy, guarded by representatives from every major species. The human ascendancy dissolved, its members scattered and disillusioned after seeing their dreams of human supremacy lead only to near extinction. Some of them joined Sarah's team, learning about the true history of ancient humanity and teaching others about the dangers of unchecked power. The Galactic Council reformed, stronger than before. The crisis had shown species the cost of division and the value of cooperation. Representatives who had been ready to go to war over the ancient technology now worked together to ensure it would never be used carelessly. But Sarah paid a price for her choice. The genetic connection she had formed with the eternal dawn, the ancestral memories that had guided her, began to fade as the ship powered down. It was like losing part of herself, watching those ancient experiences slip away like dreams upon waking. "Is this what the ancient admiral felt?" she asked Prometheus 7 one day, standing alone on the bridge of the darkened flagship. When they enacted the protocol, watching everything they were disappear? "Yes," the AI replied. She stood in this very spot, or one like it on another vessel. She watched her memories fade, knowing that future generations would have to relearn everything from scratch. It was the hardest choice she ever made. "Does it get easier?" Sarah asked. "Knowing you made the right choice even when it hurts?" "I don't know," Prometheus 7 admitted. "I'm just a machine, a recording of someone who existed billions of years ago. But if I could feel, I think I would say that the right choices are often the hardest ones, and the fact that they hurt is proof that we're still human enough to care." Sarah smiled through her tears. "You're more human than you think, Prometheus 7. 2 years later, Sarah was back on Earth, teaching xenoarchaeology at the university where she had worked before everything changed. Her office was small and cluttered with books and artifacts. Students came to her with questions about ancient civilizations, and she answered them with patience and wisdom. Sometimes, late at night, she had dreams of ancient ships sailing through young galaxies. Dreams of an admiral who looked like her, making impossible choices to save a species that didn't know it needed saving. When she woke, she could never quite remember the details, but the feeling remained. Pride, sadness, and hope all mixed together. Commander Zixith visited occasionally, bringing news from the Council and stories about how the galaxy was changing. Species that had nearly torn each other apart were now building cooperative projects, sharing technology cautiously, learning to balance power with responsibility. "You did this," Zixith said during one visit. "You showed everyone that strength isn't about how much power you can wield. It's about knowing when not to wield it." "Ancient humanity taught me that," Sarah replied. "They learned it the hard way, so we didn't have to." "Will we ever face the silence again?" Zixith asked. Sarah looked out her window at the night sky, at the stars that looked so peaceful and permanent. "Maybe. If we ever become dangerous again. If we ever start using technology in ways that threaten reality itself. But I think we'll be ready this time. We know the cost now. We know what we could lose. And the ancient fleet. The weapons? They're still there, still sealed. A reminder and a warning. We keep them not to use them, but to remember what happens when power goes unchecked." Sarah smiled, though I did start writing a book about them. A collection of stories about ancient humans who sailed between galaxies. It's mostly fiction, but it carries the truth of what really matters. "What's that?" Zixith asked. "That we're not defined by our power or our technology," Sarah said. "We're defined by our choices. Ancient humanity chose to give up everything they had built for a chance to be better. Modern humanity made the same choice when it mattered. Maybe that's the real legacy we inherited. Not weapons or ships, but the wisdom to know that some sacrifices are worth making." On her desk sat a small piece of metal, the fragment that Zixith had given her long ago. It bore a single word in ancient Terran script: humility. Sarah picked it up, feeling its weight. Somewhere out there beyond the edge of the galaxy, ancient warships slept in darkness, waiting, watching, ready if they were ever truly needed. But Sarah hoped they would never wake again. She hoped that humanity and its descendant species had learned the lesson ancient humans died to teach. Power without wisdom leads to ruin. Technology without morality leads to destruction. And the greatest strength any species can possess is the strength to say no when offered unlimited power. The stars shone outside her window, and Sarah knew that somewhere among them, the silence watched and waited too. Not as an enemy, but as a guardian, ensuring that the universe remained stable, that reality itself stayed intact. It had given them a second chance. The choice of what to do with that chance was up to them. Sarah turned back to her computer, where she was writing the next chapter of her book. It was a story about humans who learned that the greatest journey wasn't across space, but toward wisdom. That the biggest battle wasn't against external enemies, but against their own pride and ambition. It was a story that needed to be told, passed down through generations, remembered even when the details faded into myth. Because someday, some future generation might find ancient technology again. They might face the same temptations, the same choices. And when that day came, Sarah hoped the stories would be there to guide them. To remind them that humanity's greatest triumph wasn't building ships that could reshape reality. It was learning when to turn those ships off. She began typing, and the words flowed easily. Long ago, in a time when galaxies were young, there lived a people who learned the most important lesson in the universe. They learned that true power comes not from the weapons you build, but from the wisdom to know when not to use them. They were called humans, and this is their story. Outside, the night continued. The galaxy turned, and somewhere in the dark between the stars, ancient warships dreamed of a time when they might have been needed but weren't. When wisdom triumphed over power. When humanity chose to be good rather than great. It was a legacy worth remembering. A story worth telling, a choice worth making again and again forever.